Hi everyone. I thought I might talk about some of my personal history and something that I've been meditating on over the past few weeks. How new beginnings in times of intense turmoil and change can open us sometimes unexpectedly to deep humanity. As many of you probably know, I was born and raised in South Africa during the apartheid era, an era in which racism and segregation were embedded in the country's constitution. 1959, the year of my birth, was just a decade after the Afrikaans nationalist government came to power, replacing a government that had attempted to reconcile differences between the two white minorities, those English and Afrikaans, since 1910, following the Boer War. So despite the situation, or perhaps because of it, I actually had a very happy first world upbringing with all the trappings of a life, with roots of my father in England and Ireland and my mother in France. Some ways, we were a typical liberal family with a deeply felt sense of service and faith, service to the community, albeit a secluded one. In my early years, the black people I came across were mostly domestic workers whose music I loved. Durban also had a very large Indian, and still does, expatriate community, and I probably saw more Indians than I did Zulu people who made up 80% of the population of the province at that time. So I had a very secluded upbringing. That said, my father was a political activist under the radar while teaching and working on the faculty at one of the two major black medical schools in the country. And I came across Stephen Biko, who you may know the name of, as a medical student. My father was one of his mentors, and my father also took the South African Medical and Dental Council to court over Biko's very, very tragic death. And then my father represented the same organization years later in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So it was a life of contrast and a life of contradiction. Fast forward to my undergraduate years in Cape Town, and the floodgates of curious questioning of authority came pouring in with the realization that I had been living in a cultural and political lie. The inequality and brutality of the world around me was suddenly horrific. As I engaged with the wider sense of what South Africa was, I just rebelled, like many of the students around me. This was a time of massive political upheaval in the country. There were riots, there were bombs, very scary. And the students on campus refused to go to class, and we spent many weeks trying to re-educate ourselves at one time. As I participated in the demonstrations and strikes, I knew the world around me was changing forever. Out of those times of immense turmoil, there were no maps for the future and no way of going back to the fake stability of the past. All of this led me to a deep yearning for political and cultural reconciliation that has really stayed central to my life. While still studying Western classical music at the University of Cape Town, which I loved, I jumped into learning about African traditional music, which I also loved, and really was looking for a place in which I could be more meaningfully connecting to the world, speaking as an artist and speaking truth to that moment. Despite the deep suffering and anger, the bombs and rebellion, now, so many years later, the things we think of as we look back to those dark days are striking to me in their deep humanity. For instance, Nelson Mandela, one of the wisest, most powerful human leaders we know of, was in prison then, unable to be heard or seen by anyone. We couldn't even see his photograph, yet he prevailed and became the healer of the nation, and in many ways, parts of the world. The truth and reconciliation that I spoke about, a process of healing that inspired the world, could not have been imagined during the time that I was there, time of such pain, hatred, and suffering. And then musicians, Johnny Clegg, somebody who would become South Africa's most compelling storyteller, was a folk artist and ethnomusicologist who was known to just a handful of people around him in Durban. And then, as you probably know, Ladysmith Black Mambazo, amazing a cappella group, was also in Durban, barely eking out a living before they collaborated with Paul Simon and then, as you know, became world famous. So as I think back to that turmoil, my takeaway today really is that there was no way of knowing how it would work out except that those resisting the old guard believed in the fundamental goodness of humanity believed in truth and justice, believed in a commitment to ways of living that benefit all, and in many ways believed in the Rotary four-way test. Fast forward, and where we are now, living in a world of intense upheaval yet again, a time of change without certainty to show us the way. Alongside the coronavirus, we also have a rising sense that the environment is in deep distress. Political upheaval is sort of out there, and we're mired in financial uncertainty, and our deep yearning for reconciliation, political, cultural, and personal, seems to have no map. So where will this take us? Who will be our heroes? And what will we remember as the most inspiring moments of our time today? I guess it's too early to tell, but here are a few signs. With physical distancing, we seem to be listening, watching, creating in ways that feel different. As we connect through Zoom today, we're connecting in an unexpected way and creating community. And while musicians and other artists shudder at the idea of a world forever changed, they're also creating in the most amazing ways. So I'll leave you with a few quick examples. Here's a South African high school singing Alleluia.
She tied you to her kitchen chair. She broke your throne and she cut your hair. And from your lips she drew them hallelujah.
Here's a group of Jacob School of Music students performing together.
There's only so much you can control. Belief in lies has taken its toll. But never fear, just stack up on gold. And so you can go, but you better stay home.
You can call my telephone, I'll be right here. Alone at home, maybe you are home alone too. Call me on FaceTime, you'll know what to do. Oh, I'm not alone, I'm alone with you.
And I want to introduce you to this amazing composer, Eric Whitaker, who over the past 10 years has been thinking about what we call today network art, or network arts, creating an incredible choir out of musicians who are from everywhere in the world. Thank you.